Hello, Carrie Burchell here, another episode of Shine Like a North Star. In today's work, we're going to look at 3 strategies to help you dive deeper into the real work of data and how that data can drive meaning in your leadership work. So, if you're like many of the clients that I serve, we're getting meaningful data, you're using the employee engagement surveys in ways that make a lot of sense, and, well, isn't that interesting? That pattern showed last year's engagement survey as well. Or maybe the data isn't specific enough to help you really get strategy and purpose in next steps. Sometimes engagement surveys, as an example, can boil the ocean. I've been playing around lately with a culture survey, which measures more specifically wellness, anxiety, and overall culture. Even in that, sometimes the information can be a little bit broad unless you can drive and get at deeper information. So let's dive into this. If you're a thoughtful leader, and if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're in the club and you're probably looking at some of the data sets you have and you're thinking, gosh, this might help, this might help, you might come up with different strategies. And of course, you're trying to fit the employee, what they need, what the focus is of the employee, and you're trying to think about like, gosh, I want to make this better for the employee. What can do that for them? Now, the dilemma is that you're the one putting in all of this energy, right? That spin to get all of this thinking and strategizing and work done. Who's doing the most work? Well, you are, right? If we want to engage our employees, look at how we can streamline the work, reduce everyone's burnout, improve how people feel about work, then it's not just on the leader. We want to flip that. So what we want to have is the employee telling us a bunch of things that then the leader goes and implements, right? So the real question is, how do I get at these things that the employees really want in their workplace? That's where we dive deeper into the data. So your data may come from a variety of areas, right? Maybe you're just straight up observing how people behave, how they behave at work, in meetings, job performance. Okay, so just straight up qualitative observation. Good. You may also look at overall scoring on employee performance reviews. Okay, sometimes subjective if we're not super tight on how we're assessing people. You might look at engagement surveys. We've already talked about that. The culture survey that I'm playing around with, which really does seem to be a fresh way to look at that kind of thing. Because we know that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? The Drucker saying. You may also ask people, do some interviews. So all helpful, but still that data can kind of boil the ocean. So here are your tips for today in your live stream. First one is to get at that data for sure, whatever it is, right? You might even have reports around attendance and how many call-ins there are. Or you might look at staffing reports or recruitment efforts, like whatever the data is, you want to chunk it out. And in a meeting, have your employees identify, okay, so this is the data that we have for you. And you kind of put in what the big themes are. So maybe this is theme number 1, this is theme number 2, you get the idea. And you're asking the employees to come through and put dots on where they think the energy and focus needs to be as a group. So it's anonymous. Everybody has those little stickers, and you're asking them, based on this data that we have, the data that kind of boils the ocean, still a great place to start, help us dive a little bit deeper. And so, if we look at my dots, pretend they're stickers, and you're just facilitating this very simple activity in a meeting. Okay, well, we're saying number 5 is where we want to spend our energy as a collective. Okay. That's when we get strategic and we start asking, okay, so what, how, when, we start doing some smart goals around that, really getting particular about what this work is, because ultimately getting strategic and talking about the SMART goal of that pulls people in. You've seen me draw this before, right? We really want a culture where everybody's in the same circle and not sort of outside. We want to pull everybody in, and we do that in part by asking for their voice. I was chatting with one of my clients yesterday, really thinking around their culture of accountability in the company, and the group, we were discussing what some of the engagement survey work is and what it's telling them, right? So yes, you have some great data, and yes, the leadership group has come together and thoughtfully done some brilliant work. Let's dive a little deeper on that. What else can we do to get input from employees, and that input creates the buy-in. And one of the takeaways for the group that I was really highlighting is nobody moves forward in whatever initiative is happening, whatever change, culture, accountability, whatever you're looking at. People need to first feel heard. So nobody moves forward unless they feel heard. So if I'm stuck in my work is too much, like my overwhelm is too much, okay, that can be a mindset that people are stuck in. If as leaders we don't sort of say, well, I get that the work-life balance on our culture survey is low, okay, we'll do something to do that. No, what about the work-life balance gives us that low score? It's not enough to just acknowledge, okay, this is an area of growth for us. That's not going to move people. People have to feel heard. So one way they can feel heard is by doing the stickers in a meeting. Another way that they can feel heard is by forming a committee, right? So that's where you ask. So we have our entire company here, right? Everybody all over the place. And you ask who wants to join the group and form a committee. So you're going to grab some people within the company to form a committee to dive deeper in that. And then what happens is the people that don't really want to be a part of a committee, but they still want to be heard because everybody wants to be heard, they can then they can have their voices represented by the peers that have volunteered to be a part of the committee. So it can be a culture committee, an engagement committee, a safety committee, a process improvement committee, whatever the committee is. This is option number 2 of how to not boil the ocean and get below the surface data to really meaningful stuff. Because all of this is about helping people feel heard. Oops, sorry. So option number 1 is doing the stickers. Option number 2 is having a committee where everyone's voice is heard through the committee members. Okay. Option number 3 is really going out and getting voice of customer. And this can be as simple as a one question that your leadership team asks random people. So you're not going to ask the same people in your department. You're going to cross collaborate. I'm going to visit your department, you're going to visit people in my department, and we're going to ask the exact same question to get at more data around what is happening. So that voice of customer can become very powerful in understanding not just the surface data, but going deeper to see where do we need to put our energies so that we are really addressing the work that needs to happen. So we're coming out of COVID, or we're still finding our way through COVID, or we're adjusting to COVID staying, however you frame that. It's worrisome when I see companies have some of the same data points from their engagement surveys. Because COVID has shifted things so much, it's probably going to create some different trends. If we're putting some of the same strategies out there that we were putting in the first year of COVID, the second year, even pre-COVID, I have a little red flag in my head talking with those clients, because that tells me that they're addressing the surface data and not using some very simple strategies to go a little bit deeper around helping people feel heard and representing what they hear to drive strategy. So very simply, 3 things that we've talked about in this video today. I'd love to know which one you feel is most effective and kind of fits your style as a leader. The first one is taking those big themes and patterns from big overarching data sets like dashboards, engagement surveys, culture survey. Look at those big patterns and then say, here are the trends that we're seeing in the big data. Which ones do you think we need to dive into more? Right? Have them vote with stickies. Strategy number 1. Strategy number 2, and I've seen one of my clients recently implement this, super powerful, is get a committee to dive deeper into that data set. And it's the committee's responsibility to go and get the employees' input and help the employees feel heard. My recommendation would not be to handpick the people on that committee. Really let the volunteers volunteer for it. So don't volunteer anyone to join. Let the volunteers happen. Those people that maybe join are the ones that have a real passion about helping people feel heard and feeling heard. So even if they're the naysayers and the negative people on the committee, they're going to be negative either way. It's better to get it out, have them feel heard, and be in a little bit more of the driver's seat of that person's role in the committee so that you can kind of navigate them out of that negative mindset. So certainly have a leader coordinating the committee work, but it's not a committee of leaders. It's a committee of just frontline staff, frontline employees that are really representing the voice of the bigger group and collecting the voice of the bigger group, right? Because that bigger group has to feel heard if they're going to engage in the shift and the change that you want to see happen as a leader. Third one is for leaders to go out and get voice of customer. So pick one question and drive it in conversation. And my recommendation would be to cross-pollinate that work. So you're going to visit my team because you maybe don't know them that well. I'm going to visit your team and Bob's team and Jose's team and whatever the teams are, right? We're going to cross-pollinate our work. Now, the tangential benefits of that is leadership feels more present in the organization. I can appreciate what's happening in your world a little bit better because I've got to know your employees. It develops my empathy for being in your shoes a little more. And I have fresh eyes on whatever your reality is, and likewise you on mine. So there's these tangential benefits when we do voice of customer. But really, the real work is diving deeper into the data that you're collecting. Whew. Simple is hard. So I challenge you to spend the next 10 minutes of a meeting where you have some frontline employees together. Do a sticky system, get a committee going, or spend the 10 minutes to just in the meeting, actually leave the meeting and go and ask people their opinion. Do it on Zoom, do it on texting, do it on a phone call, like literally make use of your meeting time. This is not extra and outside of the meeting because what happens is we get pulled into everything once we leave the meeting. Make the meeting productive. Do the work in the meeting. That's a whole other video. All right. Carrie Burchell, love to hear which of those strategies is working for you. Love to be a part of helping you figure out how to most effectively shift the work you're doing. Go slow to go fast. It is hard to go slow, and that's the work that we need you to do as leaders when we think about creating the innovative space where good problem solving can happen. We're figuring out how to navigate the norms of, persistent COVID. We're having people, some companies I'm working with are going back to masks, their staff are out. Like, it's just messy still. We have to find new ways to navigate this. So I'd love to be a part of helping you with messy, helping you go slow to go fast. I believe in your ability as a leader to navigate this space. I truly do. The answer's in the room. Let's figure it out together. Have a great day.